My name is Orly Shoavi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SDK, and we provide actually a marketplace for mobile SDKs, as well as a platform to monitor and control mobile SDKs remotely. How many of you are app developers? Great. Game developers? Great. How many of you are SDKs developers? Monetization, engagement? Great. Okay. So you are going to understand what I'm going to talk about, but for the less techie in the crowd, let's dive into the mobile application development world. So when an app developer develops his application, he doesn't need to invent the wheel. He can focus on the logic of his own application and can use off-the-shelf products, SDKs, software development kits, for various purposes, such as advertisement, displaying ads in the application, analyzing user behavior, analytics SDKs, social SDKs to connect to social networks, advanced technology, etc., etc. It's very good. It accelerates the development of the application and really makes the life of the developer much, much easier. We can see some interesting statistics and trends about application and kits application here. We've analyzed 15,000 applications, and among them there were 3 categories of kits applications, 5 years and under, 6 years to 8 years, and 9 years and up. And we found out there are 13 SDKs on average in the total applications, and we found that in the till the age of 8, in the application that are designated to age till 8 years, there are 8 SDKs on average, and for the apps that are for 9 years and up, there are 12 SDKs on average, very similar to the total number of SDKs in the total applications. And we can see here very interesting trends. You can see the penetration of the ad networks inside the total apps. It's more than 90%. 90% of the total apps are integrating ad networks SDKs. And you can see the trend in the kids app, where the older the kids are, the more ad networks SDKs you have integrated in the application. So ad probably works better when the kid is older. But you can see the opposite trend in the payment SDKs. You can see the older the kids are, the less payment and in-app purchase SDKs are in the application. This is a very interesting trend to analyze. No surprises in the video ads SDKs penetration. You can see that the older the kids are, the more video ads SDKs. And even in 9 years and up category, you can see more video ads penetration than in the total apps penetration. Analytics is a very interesting case. We don't really know why this is happening. More than 80% of the total apps integrated analytics SDKs, Flurry, Google Analytics, etc., but much, much less for the kids applications. We think maybe it's regulation or something, but if anyone has any intelligent idea for this, we would love to hear it after this session. The winners of the most highest number of SDKs in the application are actually 3 kids apps. The first one is My Talking Tom with 40 SDKs. The second one is Swamp Attack with 38 SDKs. And the third one is My Talking Angela, 37 SDKs. That's incredible. I don't know how they control their app with so many SDKs in it. Well, we saw SDKs and we saw it's wonderful for the app developer to use SDKs. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is SDKs are someone else's code inside your code, yet you are responsible for it. You are responsible for it in the eyes of Google and in the eyes of Apple and of course in the eyes of your users. Why is it such a risk? We've identified 2 major domains of problem of risk when using SDKs. The first one is security and privacy. The SDKs, once integrated in your application, are part of your application. And if your application can get the permission from the user to access the location of the user, the private files, or even the contacts of the user, so do the 13 SDKs which we just saw in the total apps. And SDK do take advantage of such permissions. We see here, in the first part, it's a code of a real SDK, and the SDK is just trying a shitat matzliach, we call it here in Israel, where the SDK is just asking, does the application have permission to access the location of the user? If so, please go to the GPS and bring me the location of the user. It takes advantage of the permission of the app. The second part is the same with email permission. The SDK asks whether the application has permission to go to take the email account, and if so, the SDK accesses the email account and takes the email of the user. This was a privacy issue. Let's talk about some security loopholes. A malware SDK called BADNEWS. It's a Russian SDK. It was integrated in over 32 apps. It was deployed on over 2 million devices out there. Google just removed all the apps out there because they found out this SDK impersonated to be a legit ad networks, but actually it injected malware to the devices of the users. Very frustrating for the app developers to want to monetize their application easily, and then they end up losing users over it and getting removed from the Google Play Store. I'm sure many of you knows about the Baby Bus use case. Baby Bus, it's a company, Chinese company. They are developing a kids application, and again, Google removed the entire portfolio of this company from the Google Play Store just because they were using SDKs for analytics, which took the location of the user. And you cannot take the location of the users in kids' applications without the consent of the parents. Very frustrating, as I said before. So we've talked about the security and privacy. Let's now talk on the other domains, on the other domain of risk, which is the quality of service. SDKs, after all, are code. Code can have bugs, and SDKs can crash your application, for example. Here you can see a real screenshot for SafeDK dashboard, where a real app had crashed in 1 hour caused by 4 SDKs. It's not the application code, it's the SDK code who crashed the app more than 20 times in an hour. SDKs can slow down your application. They can slow down the app start time of your application. Here you can see a very sad case of an app, a real app again, which said that the application code contributes only 30% of the app start time. So it means that almost 70% of the app start time is caused by SDKs and not by the application itself. Very sad. It's a really incredible situation. We had to analyze this situation, and we found out that these 2 SDKs are special cases SDKs, which are unzipping when the application starts. They unzip the code of another file. In the other file, they have more SDK code, and this unzip operation takes time, and this is why it takes so long for the application to start. Now, this is the same application, the same cake, but this is the average start time for the second time the user starts the application. You can see here the responsible orange SDK. We've analyzed the code, and we see that the orange SDK just checks before it does the unzip operation. The code is already unzipped. If it was unzipped before, then you don't have to unzip it again, and the operation in the start time is getting lower. But for the blue SDK, it doesn't happen. It's an unresponsible case of an SDK, and it does the unzip again and again each time the application is launched. So even if you didn't get the technical details of what I was saying, you probably did get the concept that the quality of your application is very much depends on the quality of your SDKs. We see here, I'm sure you all heard about this application where you see e-cigarettes commercial ad inside kid application. Now I'm sure the ad network SDK didn't want it to happen, but it did happen, and they got many complaints, etc. One more interesting case, it was here in Israel, very big news company. They had a news application. They integrated ad network SDK, which the ad network SDK developer suddenly decided to add a feature. The feature was when the SDK identifies the shake of the device, it was just as if the user pressed the banner. So the ad was just pops up. So imagine yourself reading the news, you go here, you go there, you go on a train, you go on a bus, and you shake a little the device, and boom, you have the ad in front of your face. They got complaints, phone calls, etc. Very, very frustrating. It's because of an SDK and not because of your application code. Okay, so I've talked about the 2 major domains of problems, the security and privacy, and we've talked about the quality of service, but there is always the chance to be banned from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store just because you didn't follow the restrictions. And many of the restrictions are SDK-related restrictions. You can be banned because the SDK didn't comply with the COPPA regulation, as we said before and we saw before in the Baby Bus case. But you can also be banned because your ad network didn't follow the restrictions over advertisement. They displayed it they misplaced it, or they misplaced the X. The X should be placed in a very clear way. It should be very easy for the user to press the X in order to close the ads. You can be banned because your in-app messaging SDKs didn't show the entire text of the user that it is about to send on his behalf. You can be banned because your SDK didn't use the advertising ID, where Google restricted to use as an anonymous unique identifier. Let's talk a little about Android Marshmallow. We were recently introduced with the new runtime permission model, where the user doesn't have to agree to the permissions during installation time. It can agree only during runtime. So the app is running, and only when it really needs the permission, it asks the permissions from the users, and the user can say no, or he can say yes and then revoke the permission from the settings screen. So your application, in order to be Marshmallow compatible, needs to know how to handle the situation where you don't have this permission. But how do you know that your SDKs are Android compatible? We can assure you that very few SDKs are now Android Marshmallow compatible, and you cannot rely on their behavior when they don't get the permissions they are declaring they need. Even, by the way, even the ones that do declare they Android Marshmallow compatible say in the documentation, we rely on the application to get us the permission needed. So again, they might crash your app if the user revoked the permission or cause some bugs. So what's the solution? First, you can do it all by yourself. Don't use SDKs. Just trust only yourself. Of course, it's not a reasonable solution, time-consuming, resource-consuming, and you can't cover it all. The second solution is just use the popular one. Get the tracking, the analytics, the ad networks, the most popular one, only the Google ones. It's a nice solution, but it doesn't cover all your needs, of course. Maybe you're an innovative company, you want to try out new SDKs, maybe there's a new kid on the block SDK, you keep hearing about it, you want to try it out. So this is a good solution, but it doesn't cover everything. And the third solution is just do very extensive research, ask your friends, ask Stack Overflow, go to a specialist websites, etc. Again, it doesn't cover all the topics that we were just talking about. So we're in SafeDK handle these exact problems, and we have 3 possible solutions for you. The first one is our marketplace. We have Marketplace, the largest database for SDKs in our safedk.com, the one-stop shop to find the best SDK for your application. We have rating, reviews, discussions for each SDK. We really encourage you to go there and find the SDKs for you and contribute to the developers community. Rate SDKs, have others learn from your experience with bad SDK or malicious SDKs. The second solution is our SafeDK in-app protection. It's a platform to monitor real-time behavior of SDKs. We identify malicious or problematic behavior of each SDK in real time and alerts the developers of any such behavior. And we also have allowed the developers to remotely control SDKs. They can switch off an entire SDK or specific permissions for specific SDKs. We'll see it in a minute. The third solution is using our very cool App X-ray tool. You can find it in our website. You just can scan famous apps, similar apps as your apps, and see which SDKs they are using, and you can just use as the SDKs they are using. Let's see our in-app protection solution. We've talked about Talking Tom, tons of SDKs in Talking Toms, and all Talking Tom developers have to do in order to use our platform is just drag and drop the APK file, the application file, into our platform. For the developers, we also have plugin for Android Studio to do it, and we automatically identify the entire list of SDKs they have in the application. Okay, you can see it here. You can even see the ratings from our marketplace for each SDK. And from now on, each SDK is monitored by us. We identify, as I said before, any performance degradation or a crash or excessive battery consumption. You can see it in here. And we also provide the one step further. If you find a crucial bug or security loophole in a specific SDK, you can just turn it off. It's that simple. You can switch the SDK off, and you don't need to update the version to the stores again. And you don't need to wait for users to update the application. The SDK won't be called anymore, and the security loophole is done. We also provide a way to do it in a smart way, to deactivate an SDK only for specific devices or specific countries or specific Android version where the bug is happening. What you can see in here is the granular control over SDK's permissions. So for example, you can just switch off the permission for this specific SDK, only the camera permission and the microphone permission, only for this SDK. So the app itself and other SDKs can still access the camera and the microphone. No operating system is giving you this capability so far. This is our app X-ray, it's Tubtail application. You can see here, you can just scan any application, enter any free Android application, and you can see the entire list of SDKs of this app. So what we're saying is you're not going to stop using SDKs, of course. Use as many SDKs as you need to create your wonderful app. Just use it with caution. That's all.
If you guys have any questions, now's the time to ask before we let you go.
Which app is which SDK is most commonly found inside of the children's apps?
Yeah, we do. It would be, I can share it with you, it would be InMobi. We have InMobi, we have Flurry, and we have AdMob. Yeah, we do. Actually, we have one Tubtail application, which is a Unity application. And what they do, they're not using our plugin for Android Studio. They are using the other way that we showed. They just drag and drop the APK file, the final APK file, to our platform, and then they get a protected APK file back. So yes. Thank you.